We think we know the people we love. We see them at the breakfast table, we hear their heavy footsteps in the hallway, and we memorize the lines around their eyes when they laugh. But when a man dies, he takes a universe of secrets with him. My father was a man of few words, a man of iron habits and a quiet heart. He worked as a clockmaker, a trade of precision and silence. When he passed, he left me the house, his tools, and a silence so profound it felt like a physical weight. I expected to find ledgers of debt or perhaps a hidden will. Instead, I found a slip of paper tucked inside his favorite copy of the Brothers Karamazov, 10 names. 10 addresses. People I had never heard of. No instructions, no explanation. Just a list of strangers. I told myself I was just curious. I told myself I owed him one last errand. But as I knocked on the first door, I realized I didn't know my father at all. And more importantly, I realized that the man I thought was just a quiet clockmaker had spent his life building something far more intricate than a watch. He had been weaving a web of invisible grace, and now, the thread was in my hands. The funeral was as quiet as the man himself. A few neighbors, the local baker, and the sound of rain against the cemetery canopy. My father, Thomas, had lived a life of unremarkable consistency. To me, he was a man who preferred the company of gears to the company of people. He was a good man, Elias, the baker said, patting my shoulder. A steady man, steady. That was the word. Not kind, not heroic, just steady. 2 days later, I sat in his study. The room smelled of machine oil and old paper. That was when I found the list. It was hidden in the back of the book, right where the character Alyosha speaks of love. 10 names. The first was Arthur Miller, 14, Blackwood Lane. I looked at the name. It meant nothing to me. But the handwriting was unmistakably my father's, deliberate, slanted, and firm. There was a date next to the name, Thursday, 4 p.m. It was currently Wednesday. I felt a strange, cold shiver. My father had been dead for a week, but the list felt like a living command. The second name led me to a young woman in a hospital ward. The third, to a schoolteacher who had received anonymous envelopes of cash for her students' supplies for years. By the fifth name, the pattern was clear. My father wasn't just a clockmaker, he was a silent architect of lives. He looked for the cracks in the city and filled them with himself. He did it without a word, without a thank you, and without ever telling his own son. I felt a simmering anger. Why had he been so generous to them and so distant with me? We had lived in the same house for 20 years, yet he had shared more of his heart with these strangers than with the boy who sat across from him at dinner. The sixth name was Sarah Thorne. She lived in a small apartment above a florist. When I told her who I was, she didn't cry. She looked at me with a profound, piercing pity. He talked about you constantly, Elias, she said, pouring tea. He didn't talk to me, I snapped. He talked about me, he was afraid, Sarah said softly. He told me he didn't know how to show you that a man's worth isn't in what he says, but in what he leaves behind. He thought if he spoke it, it would become a lie. He wanted you to find it on your own. She handed me a small box. He left this for the sixth person on the list to give to you. He knew you'd come looking. Inside was a small brass gear, polished until it shone like gold. The list was getting shorter, but the burden was getting heavier. I found myself fixing things. I wasn't a clockmaker, but I had watched him my whole life. I knew how to tighten a screw. I knew how to listen to the rhythm of a machine to find where it was hurting. At the eighth house, an elderly woman needed her porch steps repaired. I didn't just deliver the news of my father's death, I stayed. I bought the wood. I hammered the nails. My hands bled, and my back ached, but for the first time since the funeral, the silence in my head stopped screaming. I realized that my father's distance wasn't coldness. It was a stoic's humility. He believed that the moment you brag about a good deed, the deed dies. To keep it alive, it must remain a secret between you and the world, but the ninth name stopped me cold: Elias. My own name was the ninth name on the list. Next to it, he had written, "The clock shop." Midnight. I went to the shop at midnight. The air was thick with the rhythmic talk of 100 different lives. I sat at his workbench, the very spot where he had spent 40 years. In the center of the desk was a letter and a final, 10th name. But the space for the name was blank. The letter read, "Elias, if you are reading this, you have seen the world through my eyes. You have seen that people are like clocks. They are beautiful, intricate, and prone to breaking. They don't need a lecture on how to work, they just need someone to stay until the ticking starts again. The 10th name is yours to choose. It is the person you will help without being asked. It is the life you will mend without taking the credit. This is your true inheritance. Don't let the world go silent." I looked at the blank line. I thought of the city outside, the millions of people rushing past one another, each carrying a broken gear, a stalled heart, a silent struggle. The anger was gone. In its place was a terrifying, beautiful clarity. My father hadn't been absent, he had been preparing me for the only job that mattered. I picked up his pen. My hand didn't shake. I didn't write a name. I simply tucked the paper into my pocket and walked toward the door. I didn't need a list anymore. I knew how to look for the silence. We spend our lives searching for a legacy in all the wrong places. We want our names on buildings, our faces on screens, and our bank accounts full. But the legacy of Thomas the clockmaker wasn't in the stones of his house or the ticking of his clocks. It was in the quiet repairs he made to the human spirit when no one was watching. He understood a truth that we often forget: the most powerful thing you can do for another person is to see their brokenness and decide it is worth your time. Perhaps you are looking for your own purpose today. Perhaps you feel like your life is a series of small, unnoticed tasks. But remember the list of strangers. You are part of an invisible architecture of kindness. You are the gear that keeps another heart from stopping. Your inheritance isn't what was left for you. It's what was left in you. Go out today and find your 10th name. Not for the praise, not for the reward, but because the world is a heavy place, and it gets a little lighter every time someone decides to care in secret. The loudest thing you will ever do is a kindness that no one hears.